account tab. Here you can see average storage used. If you click here, so you will get failsafe. Okay, click on failsafe. It will give you the detailed information like how much data it was deleted completely from the table once the retention period is over, and this is how the data it was maintained in failsafe, and it will stay there for 7 days. Okay, so once the data is get into the failsafe, so no user operations performed. Only Snowflake support team can help us to get it the data. So for this, Snowflake will charge bit extra. Okay, so as a Snowflake admin, I recommend every Snowflake admin people whenever Snowflake admin join into new project. So I recommend for them to always keep eye on this failsafe. Okay, the reason is especially in development system. So I have customer data which is having more than 100 GB. Okay, so with this month of July 1st, I have loaded. So this is a development system. And make a Snowflake develop system. And the table is customer. Data or file, size, date, landscape, and the table. Okay. Status, inserted or loaded. Okay, so same 100 MB 100 GB data I have loaded into table called customer in development system. And the next day what I did is on the same day I have deleted. Okay, so when the moment you deleted and this 100 GB of data, it will by default the retention period is 1 day, right? One day. So after 8th, after 2nd, what will happen is this retention period is over, then automatically this 100 GB, it will get into failsafe. Okay. And the next day I have performed the same data. I have loaded and I have repeated the same thing 4 or 5 times. So here what will happen is, in July 1st, I have loaded 100 GB of data. And the same day I have deleted. I'm doing some trials and errors in development system. Okay, so on the next day I have loaded again 100 GB of data and I have deleted. The same way I have repeated 3 times. So what will happen is, this 100 GB of data, 100 GB, 100 GB. So total in failsafe now it is 300 GB of wastage data. It is get recorded. Okay, so in development system, ideally this much volume of the data we are not supposed to work. So whatever you are doing trials and errors, take a very minimal small amount of data, like 100 records or 1000 records. 10,000 records is more than sufficient to test any kind of scenarios in development system. But if you take 100 GB or 50 GB or 200 GB of data and you are trying to deleting and loading and deleting and loading and deleting, then this many times, how many times you deleted, and after the retention period is over, the complete data it will get registered in the failsafe. Unnecessarily Snowflake taking more space to save and record this data. Okay, this based on the volume of the data, how it is getting backupping in failsafe, accordingly Snowflake will charge. Ideally this is additionally a cost to the project, right? So that is the reason, as a Snowflake admin, we always keep eye on failsafe if you are joining into new project. Okay, so by looking at failsafe as an account admin, so we will get to know each and every user, how much data they are utilizing, how much data unnecessarily it is get recorded into failsafe. So that Snowflake admin, by looking here, so they can easily get to know. And an average for the entire project, how much data it is getting into failsafe. Okay, any doubts here? This is really important. As a Snowflake admin, this is not related to development. Clear? Any doubts here? Am I audible or hello?
Yes, Mahesh. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm assuming everyone is clear on this topic, and we will move on to types of tables in Snowflake. So far we have created a table like create a table name. So we are not specifying anything. So I'll just give syntax and the table type retention period failsafe. Okay, so table we having three types of tables. One is permanent table, and transient table, temporary table. Okay, so the syntax for the permanent table is basically ideally the permanent table. Let me give you the syntax. Create table name employee. Or for your reference, I'll make here table name. Okay, so far we are creating a permanent tables directly. So we are not yet created any transient table. For permanent table, which means yeah. So this is how we are creating a table. Create table name we are specifying. If you are not specifying anything, then by default it is a permanent table. Okay, and the retention period it is enabled as, and the failsafe also enabled for permanent table by default, and this is not configurable by the user failsafe feature. Okay, so this is the kind of automatic backup which is taken care by Snowflake automatically. Okay, for transient table, the syntax is create transient table name. Okay, so if you are specifying a transient, create a transient table, then the table is nothing but a transient table. For transient table, retention period is enabled by default, and failsafe feature won't be enabled. Okay, so if we want to enable a failsafe feature for transient table, then it is not at all possible. Even if you contact to Snowflake support team also, they won't allow us or they won't recommend us to enable failsafe feature in transient table. Clear? And for temporary table, this is the syntax. Table, create a temporary table name. Okay, so retention period won't be enabled, and failsafe also won't be enabled. Okay, so here you may expect interview questions, types of tables in Snowflake: permanent table, transient table, and temporary table. So what are the difference between these three is, for permanent table, retention period and failsafe feature is enabled by default, and failsafe feature is not configurable by the user. And transient table, retention period is enabled, but failsafe feature won't be enabled. And for temporary table, retention period and failsafe feature won't be enabled. Okay, so these three are the difference. So, and one more difference here is, so this is a different worksheet, and this is different worksheet, and this is different worksheet. So if I create a table, permanent table and transient table, I have created a table in Snowpipe sheet. So same table I can access the data in different sheet. Okay, so we can access from one worksheet to another worksheet if the table is created with temporary or permanent table. Sorry, permanent table and transient table we can access from other worksheet level, but temporary table we cannot access it. So the temporary table, for example, if I create a temporary table with time travel worksheet, I can access only in this sheet only. So if I want to access the temporary table in different worksheet, I cannot able to access it. Okay, so we will see it practically. So theoretically, you guys are clear? Any doubts here? Okay, let me verify it. Okay, data is there. So first we'll go ahead with permanent table. We already seen. Permanent EMP. Snow underscore table only.
System admin.
Okay, system admin. I have to change the role. Okay, so now I'm looking for the data. Permanent table. Okay, so we have created only. Insert into. So here you guys are understanding, right? So I'm not defining any table structure here. So if I specifying like table name, so whatever the table structure it was defined in Snow table, that will automatically it will consider by the permanent underscore EMP table. Okay, So now I'm inserting the data, whatever the data is available in the table. Select star from. Okay, so total 518 records are there. So by default, the retention period is show tables like table name. So by default, the retention period is 1 day. Okay, so imagine if this table having some 1 billion record or 1 lakh record. So by default, the retention period is 1 day. So what will happen is I'm truncating the data, truncate, or I'm completely deleting the table. Drop table name, permanent, and so the table get deleted. Okay. So when the moment you deleted the table, in the backend, what will happen is you just create one more file version, and it will be maintained in the. Just remove the metadata pointers for those deleted records and deleted the table both. So this case we are deleting the table, right? So this data, it will be maintained. This kind of data we will call it as a metadata backup. So this metadata will be maintained till tomorrow 7:20 a.m. Which means from the time of this execution of this statement till 24 hours, this data it will be maintained. So within 24 hours, if I undrop the operation, whatever I performed, undrop table, then I can roll back the data. So restored successfully. If I didn't restore it, so after 24 hours, what will happen is this 518 records, it will get completely go on register in the failsafe. This 518 rows. Okay, automatically it is taken care by the Snowflake, which means automatic backup. Okay, so let's see for transient table. Transient table. So if I specify transient table, that means this is the transient table. TRA_employee. And no need to specify it. Anyway, this keyword here is there. Okay, I'm creating a table called employee. So I'm loading the data from Snowflake Snow table to employee table. So total 518 records get inserted. If I look for the data, total 518 rows. Okay, so for transient table, let's see what is the default retention period. So the retention period is 1 day. So by default for permanent and transient table, retention period is 1 day. So here if I perform the same operations, I am dropping a table. Okay. So within 24 hours, if I undrop the table, then the complete data I can able to get back it. Okay. But what will happen is if I undrop the table, if I drop the table again, so now the table itself not exist, correct? Because we have dropped it. Okay, so after 24 hours, if I try to undrop the table name, I won't get it back, and the data, whatever the data it is there, which means 518 records, it won't go and store in failsafe. Okay, only permanent tables data only, it will automatically takes the backups of the data, and that data it will get stored in failsafe. Only permanent table, transient table it will not consider it. So that is the reason in the development system, if you want to perform on 1000 dB of data, try to create a transient table, and you can perform 1000 GB of data or 100 GB of data or 5 GB of data. It doesn't matter. You can upload it, you can delete it, you can upload it, you can delete it n number of times. Anyway, the data, transient table data, it won't get stored in failsafe. And indirectly, we are not costing additional cost to the project. Clear? And the last one is temporary table. For temporary table, temp underscore employee I'm creating. I'm creating a table, temp underscore employee. I'm loading the data into the table. So the records get loaded. So 518 rows get inserted into temp underscore employee. So if I look for the retention period, so it is set for 1 day. Ideally, this, even if it is set for 1 day, it won't helpful. The reason is, in the same worksheet you are creating a table temp underscore emp. Okay, so if I want to look for the data in another worksheet, or I'll create one more worksheet, and here I'm trying to looking for the data. SQL execution cancel, because the temporary table can be exist only within the worksheet. So this worksheet level only it will exist. In other worksheet you won't exist it. For transient table, I can access it. for permanent table also I can access it. Okay, so it is not only from one worksheet to another worksheet. Another Snowflake developers also can access if the other Snowflake developer or other Snowflake admin people having access or permissions to look for this access for this data table, then they can able to access this data. For permanent table, transient table, they can able to access it, but temporary table they can't access it because this temporary table can exist only within the worksheet. Clear? Any doubts here? So here if I drop the table, okay, so this transient table, right? So the table is successfully deleted, and if I undrop also, see the getting error, right? Syntax error line 1 at the position table temp. Okay, if I undrop it, so it is showing object temp already exists. Okay, let me, table is deleted. Then if I try to undrop it, the table get restored. Okay, so ideally in the real time temporary table, no one will go ahead and create a table with temporary. Okay, so in development system, if you are performing anything, then it should be 100%. It is recommendable to create transient table. Don't create a permanent table directly in development system. It is not at all suggestible. Okay, only in the live system only it is recommended to create permanent table. In the live system, we should not create a temporary table in the live system. Okay. So now if I look for the history, select star from sales dot information schema dot table table underscore stage storage underscore matrix. I forgot the command name. Select star from table. this command is basically we will get to know the failsafe is enabled for the table or not. That's it. So let me try it once again for temporary table. Okay, it is enabled. Select star from temp underscore employee. About information schema. Recheck it once. So any doubts so far? The table types. Then if no questions, then we will move on to the next topic, cloning. So cloning is basically, so for example, I have a table in production system. So I want to make some changes in the production table. So instead of directly making the changes in the production table, what I can do is I'll copy the complete production table data into development table, and I can perform the operations on development table, which means I'll correct the data in the development table. So without touching the production table, we can do everything in the development system itself. So cloning is basically, for example, in the table having, so this is, imagine this is the table A is a production table. Okay, so this production table having some 10 GB of data. So here I have to correct some records. So instead of correcting directly in production table, what I can do is I just by applying a clone, what it will do is it just copy only metadata only. So in table A metadata, it will copy into table B. Table B is nothing but different table in development system. So this 10 GB of data, it will back to development system, from production to development. So for this, Snowflake will charge zero amount. So that is the beauty of Snowflake. So in other database, other technology, if you take any other technology, if you are trying to copying the data from production to development table or development system, it will charge heavily. But here, cloning is nothing but it just copying the metadata. So it doesn't matter how the volume of the data it is. The complete data, it will be moved to development system. So with the zero cost, I can perform this 10 GB of data. It will be available in my development system. So here I have corrected the data. So without deploying in single statement, so there is one more topic, swap. So by applying a swap statement, so we can move this corrected data from development to production, and production table data it will back to development table. So that I will discuss in detail in swap. So here it just copies the data from table A to table B, which means imagine this is a production table and this is a development table. Okay, so for transferring or moving the data, it will be zero cost only. So here, when we are trying to cloning a table, which means Snowflake copying the metadata of table A to table B. So here, if you observe the table A metadata also is there. So you may get doubt, it should be table B metadata. No, it should be table A metadata only. It is copying to table B. But if you observe, table A and table B pointing to the same storage area. Okay, so if I make any changes on this table, it won't impact on this table. If I make any changes in this table, it won't impact on table B. Okay, once the cloning is done, these two tables remains independent to each other. So there is no relation here. Okay, so the important point here is you are not making a copy of storage. You are only making a copy of metadata. Metadata is different. Metadata storage is copying of storage is different. So when you are copying a storage, which means, so for example, here we are using a storage, and if I make any changes on table B, it will reflect in table A. If I make any changes on table A, then it will reflect to table B. If it is storage, for storage it will charge. But here the cloning statement, in the sense, it just copy the metadata. So when it is copying the metadata, as I said, right, so these are the file versions it will be maintained, okay, in the back end. So when you are applying a cloning, the same file versions, the metadata, this arrow mark is there, right? This arrow mark, it will indicate to this metadata. So here table A, it is indicating the same metadata, and table B also indicating same metadata. So how you may get doubt here, how it will be independent to each other. If I make any changes on table A, so what will happen is it maintain the file versions with respect to this table level. If I make any changes on table B, so it is pointing to the same metadata pointers only, but it will maintain the file versions which belongs to table B, so that these two tables remains independent to each other. Clear? Any doubts here? No doubts? Guys, you guys are really understood, or
Can you explain once again?
yeah, give me a minute. I'm connecting charger. Imagine this is a production system. Okay, so I got the requirement in table A having some 10 GB of data. So there is a correction in the table, in table A. So somewhere around I have to change almost more than 1 GB of data. I have to update it. So instead of directly log into production, instead of making changes directly on production system, what we can do is I'm applying a cloning in the development system. I'm logging to development system. Okay, so I'm creating a table called table B. So when I'm applying a cloning, which means the complete data will be moved to from production to development system. So now I'm having 10 GB of data. So the complete 10 GB of data, it will copied into development table. So now in the development system, I'll correct the data. Corrected error records. Okay. So if you make any corrections here, then there is no relation between these two tables. Okay, so you are corrected in the development system, and if you check in the production system, having old data only. So here we are just copying the metadata only, copying the metadata from table A to table B. So once the cloning is done, these two tables remains independent to each other. So if I make any changes in table A in production system, it will be tracked by table A only. So there is no those changes, it won't reflect to table B. Okay, so if I make any changes on table B, then those changes we can track in table B only. So those changes we cannot track and we cannot see it in table A. So that is the meaning of independence. Okay, these two tables remains independent to each other. But when you cloning a table, so you may see in so these two are this is the file versions in production. So when we are cloning, after cloning is done, this table B also it will pointing to the same storage area. In table B also same storage area. Okay, so you may get doubt here. So once the cloning is done, table A and table B is pointing to same storage area. So how it will become independent to each other. So here we are not copying the storage. So the storage remains same. We are copying only metadata. So metadata in the sense, it is nothing but a combination of table name. Table is nothing but number of rows and columns. First columns will come, combination of columns and rows. So this table name is different, this table name is different, but column names and data is same. If I make any changes on table A, then it will be maintained file versions. File versions 1 and file versions 2, something like that, it will get stored with belongs to the table A. So if you look for the same changes in table B, you won't get it here. If you make any changes on table B, so it will be maintained file versions 1, file versions 2 with respect to the table B. Clear? So the overall what I'm trying to saying here is, when you are cloning a table, so it just copying the metadata, and once the cloning is done, these two tables remains independent to each other. It doesn't matter how the volume of the data it is there in the table A. When you are applying a cloning, it will be free of cost. If the table having one record or 1 billion record or 1 trillion records are there, it doesn't matter. It just copy and give it to us. So you can perform all the things in development system. Once you corrected, once the array records are corrected in development system, so the next step I'll tell you, so how it can be handled. Okay, so here as a Snowflake admin, by default you may not have permissions to clone a table directly from production table to development table. So you may require additional permissions, so which has to given by Snowflake admin guys. Clear? Mostly if you take any project, if the project somewhere around 30 Snowflake developers are working, just imagine 30 Snowflake developers and 4 Snowflake admins. So this out of 30 Snowflake developers, hardly they will give maximum 5 people they will give access for production. Rest all they should work on only in development or hardly quality system access. Once you are expert, then only they will give access directly on production system. Otherwise they won't give you. Okay. For Snowflake, 4 Snowflake developers are there, right? So 2 people they will dedicatedly work on production system. So 1 guy is sufficient. These 2 people is backup purpose. Another person is backup purpose. In case if it is a 24/7, accordingly they has to hire it. Okay. Clear? Any questions here?
Hello.
Yeah.
Here we are copying data or moving the data from table A to table B.
We are copying metadata.
Okay.
So we should not use the word data. So if you use the word data, then it will be a kind of traditional database word it is. So here in Snowflake, we should when we get a interview question like cloning related, then we should always talk about the metadata. Okay.
Okay.
So we are just copying the metadata. Okay. So you may get another interview question. When we clone data storage or it will copy of data? The answer is it will copy of metadata only. Okay. And another interview question. If I'm cloning a production table, so I have a table A and table B, I'm cloning. So after cloning, making some changes in okay, so after cloning, so I have made some changes here. Okay, so these changes I want to look in this table. So how you can do that? We cannot look it because once the cloning is done from table A to table B, these two tables remains independent to each other. So if you make any changes on table B, it will be tracked by table B only. If you make any changes on table A, it will be tracked by table A only. Okay. And now move on to practical